Well, welcome to this special edition podcast. My name is Gavin Smith and I'm sitting here with Lewis Roderick. We serve together in Christchurch, on the team together, and we are responsible for the Rebuild Conference.
That is carrying a lot of weight right now. We are responsible for this, aren't we?
It was a good idea when we talked about it initially. And it's still a great idea, but there's work to do. Today's podcast is about an opportunity to hear our hearts, I guess, for the conference, to invite you, to connect with you and find out, actually, is this something that you'd love to come along to?
Yeah.
So tell us, mate, we've sat and talked about this for a while.
Yeah, it's been a dream of ours for a little while, this, hasn't it? We have been readjusting to life post COVID-19. I mean, as I say this, I've had 3 text messages of people today saying I'm probably not going to be around on Sunday because COVID's got me. But, you know, theoretically, we are edging towards the post-pandemic life
Moment.
And we've realised as a church leadership here at Christchurch that things aren't the same as the way they were.
Yeah.
The pandemic has changed not just the landscape, you know, in which people go to church or choose to go to church, but I think the pandemic has also changed people.
Yeah.
And has sort of awoken some things and switched some things off. And I guess as we've been sort of considering what does leading a church in this brave new world, what does it look like? And as we listen to some of our friends who are doing likewise, we realize that we're asking the same questions, and we want to put on a conference to help us all sort of figure out what is life post-pandemic for churches. And so that is the Rebuild Conference.
Yeah, that's the heart, isn't it? I guess we get the opportunity to sit around as a team and bounce ideas, and we know pastors, your friends and other friends who are on their own, or they're trying to work it through with a group of elders who are also busy trying to readjust to things. So why not just kind of bring us all together and chuck us all in the pot and say, right, let's work this out together. You know, God, speak to us and teach us and remind us of your grace and remind us that you're going to build your church. And
that's absolutely right, isn't it?
We want these kind of moments, don't we, to hear.
Yes, there are some things that have changed completely. Some things have been given that we are not so comfortable with having received. Some things have been taken away and they're never coming back. But there's one thing that remains, and that's the gospel of Jesus Christ. And our calling as Christians and as church leaders is to go, how can we best communicate the gospel of Jesus Christ to the world in which we live now? We do not want to be we do not want to have a perfect missional strategy for 2018 or 2019. We want to be able to communicate the gospel to the people around us now. And so this conference is a good opportunity to learn, not just from, I think, some excellent speakers. We've been blessed by the people who have been willing to take part in the conference, but also to sit with peers from across a broad spectrum and be able to learn from one another. Because I think, you know, we may all be asking the same questions, but we may not all have the answers, and I'm looking forward to hearing from some of my peers as I work out some of these things. Yeah,
I think it's good, and I think we first talked about, didn't we, of you know, I wrote an article on the church office website just saying about how you know, if you experience a disaster or a flood, you know, you can in your home, and you've got the option of you to rebuild it to exactly how it was before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Or you've got the option to build it slightly differently now.
Yeah.
And kind of that picture of a flood and a house was something that kind of hit me straight away when we were talking about our conference. But I think the first thing I read after rereading the article and putting it on the website was this: it was a little bit cold and it was a little bit clinical, and it didn't have the losses and the people that haven't returned and the challenges and pastors that are exhausted and are thinking, what do we do? You know, it didn't capture all of that, and that's been tough, isn't it, for leaders?
It's been a tough couple of years. I mean, I think I've experienced in my own life a sense of sadness that over the last couple of years that I it really just caught me by surprise. I mean, there was that initial sort of like emotional smash that we all experienced, like in the March of 2019, but then that, you know, I may have readjusted and, you know, gotten used to the circumstances, but that sense of loss and sadness sort of sat with me, and I think probably will sit with me. And in some ways, I'm grateful to the Lord for it, because I've learned to I've learned to pray differently. I've learned to engage with parts of the scripture differently. I mean, I think we now have a vocabulary of lament in the West that we previously, we at least we thought we didn't need. During the conference, I'm really glad that Paul Mallard from Bath has been kind enough to come and do a seminar on biblical lament and grieving the losses, and just teaching us how to acknowledge the loss that COVID has brought. I mean, some churches are grieving a loss of capacity.
Yeah.
Some are grieving a loss of contribution from members, whether that's physical contribution, as in persons, or whether that is financial.
Yeah.
Others are grieving the losses of individuals that have been taken home. And personally, my greatest loss, I think, as I reflect on the last couple of years, has been, I think we baptized, I could name 8 people that we baptized in the months leading up to COVID. And I think despite the church's good efforts, I think, to pursue them, I think they've disappeared. All but 2 have disappeared through the pandemic. And that sort of makes sense of the parable that Jesus said about the parable of the sower, but it also leaves a real sense of sadness and loss and lament. And so I'm glad that Paul's going to come and teach us how to lament biblically.
Yeah. And I think if you're listening to this podcast, you'll have a story as well. There'll be something. I think we've all experienced different losses and challenges in this, and exhaustion, personally. And I think one of the sessions of kind of rebuilding your soul, Pete Greasley's going to take on that session, and we love Pete, and we get to hear him every week.
That's the only way we can get him to turn up to a conference, isn't it? By asking him to come speak at once. So.
And just rebuilding the pastor, rebuilding the soul, just enjoying grace again, just enjoying the gospel, reminding us about the love and the joy and the passion of all that we've been called to do to serve our churches. I think that's going to be an important session, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I'm not going to be daft enough to say the pastors or church leaders or those in leadership have had a harder gig than others over the last couple of years. I think I could think of a number of people in our church that have carried burdens that I couldn't even imagine. But there is this has had an attritional effect on our spirituality over the last couple of years. It's been hard for people. And I think we need to acknowledge that and just go, right, we're all in we're all in the dust here. What is my first step in rebuilding a healthy spirituality and a healthy walk with Jesus, and recapturing a sense of hope and God's grace towards me as I acknowledge this sadness. And I can't think of anybody better to come and do it, actually, because as much as I love to, as much as I'm going to joke about Pete, only showing up to the conference because he's speaking at it, I also am delighted that he's doing the session because he's got an inner life that I admire and I aspire towards, and he does pray and he does walk with the Lord, and I want to learn from him, and I'm glad to walk to learn from him. What sessions like standing out to you, Bert, apart from the one that you're going to do? So apart from that,
well, I'm a big fan of Steve Robinson.
Okay.
So, get the old Scouser down here to serve us. I mean, he's talking about church planting, and that might be the last thought on people's minds is, how do we take the gospel out into new areas and reach new people? And so I'm excited to say, right, how is that session going to work? How are you going to take this, what we're talking about, the context of how people are doing, how churches are doing, how leaders are doing, and how are we going to learn from him to say, right, what does a rebuild look like to reach out? And maybe that's revitalization, maybe that's doing, church planting in a totally different way. So I love the thought of being on a church plant. I love, people who go out and do it. I just think it's brilliant. So excited to see what he's going to bring.
The thing that I've been the folk that, as I've been sort of talking to people about the conference and inviting them along, the ones that I'm most excited about seeing among us and learning from are the ones that have said, I tried to plant a church, or I started planting a church in 2018. And I want to hear, I'm looking forward to those sessions where we're sat across a table, maybe over lunch or whatever, and I'm learning from them what they've learnt about the Lord through these last couple of years, because there's no doubt that the Lord has been with them.
Yeah.
The question, but the reality is, the reality has probably been very different to what they were expecting. But you're absolutely right. The mission hasn't changed.
Yeah.
The call of God upon us as churches is to see the gospel advance and to see disciples being made across the earth, and to look to the horizons, and to not rest until Jesus says it's time to lay down your weapons, guys, or to lay down those. It's just time to rest now. We're done, and I'm really looking forward to meeting some of those church planters that have, so far haven't signed up, but have said they want to come. So that's Wales for you. But
That's good. That's good. I think some of the seminars are great. The people who have already signed up and have said to me, the mental health, the counselling in the local church is crucial. The deconstruction, why it matters.
Deconstruction is a big issue.
People are talking about that.
Let's talk about that for a second, because it's not a word that we. So deconstruction is a very trendy term a trendy word to be using. Why are we doing a session on deconstruction? And the reason is, I think over the last couple of years, people have been alone with their thoughts, and that hasn't always taken them to healthy places. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a healthy thing to deconstruct to a degree, to ask questions like, why do I believe what I believe? Upon what is it built? But if you keep on pulling the thread, then the question is, what is going to be left at the end? So there's something healthy there. If you end up pulling it to find the gospel, but if you pull it through the gospel, then, oh goodness me, that's not a healthy thing at all. And I actually think that the issue of deconstruction is more common in churches than we realise. We just don't use the term. We just may be more familiar with people just going through funny seasons or disappearing from church altogether. And we've asked Elizabeth Oldfield, like a dear friend of mine, to come from London and to do a session. What is deconstruction and why does it matter? Yeah. And Liz is one of the most original thinkers I can imagine. And oh man, I mean, to think that I'm just chuffed. I was not expecting her to have the time to come and do this conference, but I'm chuffed that she's coming.
Yeah, she's going to be great. It's good. And then we've pulled together Andy Hunter from FIC.
Andy Hunter,
the director of Scotland and Northern England.
Yeah, he's going to be doing a session on the church and state, because I think, probably for the first, it's not the first time in 400 years, but for a significant season in our life as an independent church. And in independent churches, we've gone, we sort of know the rules with the government. We haven't really had to make hard calls on big things. And then suddenly COVID comes along and we are having to adhere to the government's say on when we should meet or how we should meet or what that should look like. And then they start sort of telling us what our worship should look like, as they tell us we shouldn't sing, we shouldn't break bread. And as a Christian and as a pastor, I want to be really concerned about people's health, but I also think that well-being and health includes the soul as well, and the Lord has given us something, so these things for the good of the people. And so we were forced to ask questions of, I know the government is saying this, but is it right to object and to find another way? And we got through it with the pandemic and we all landed in different places and whatever, but the next time this comes around, I want to have some categories in order to think, how do I engage with what the government is saying? Do we follow blindly, or do we apply a bit more discernment? And Andy is going to is giving some real thought to that, and he was recommended to come and do this session, and I'm really looking forward to hearing his content.
He's going to be travelling the furthest, I think.
He is currently travelling the furthest.
It's going to be close.
TBC, because there may be somebody coming from the States. Ooh. but we can't go into that yet. That's for
keep an eye on the socials and listening to who's going to be the speakers. So we've covered some of the main ones, but we can't forget Joel Verga.
Oh, Joel, man,
mate, that was a phone call to pull him into.
Do you know how it's happened? Speakers. Do you know how I got? Did I tell you?
No, you didn't tell me. No.
Well,
I remember you did a voice message
I did a video message from. I was like, "Hi Joel, we've never met before, and I don't really know why your number's in my phone book, but would you come and speak at this conference?" And thankfully, he didn't think I was.
That's good.
Yeah, he didn't think I'd lost my
I
mind.
was praying for it. No.
Yeah, he's been amazing. He has really.
He's reorganised his schedule, hasn't he, to be
been,
here and to serve us.
He's been so generous. I think when we did sit down and he realised that I wasn't crazy, I think he really got the vision for the conference, and has kindly been willing to rearrange his plans in order to come along. He's going to do the session on rebuilding the local church, or rebuilding the church, and I asked, Joel, would you be willing to tell us about just the beauty of the church and why the church is, well, as Spurgeon said, the dearest place on earth. And I can't think of anybody, I can't. When you're talking about the local church, I love hearing the guys from New Frontiers. They get the centrality of the local church, not just to the mission of Jesus in this world, but also the mission of the Christian, how the local church is where it's at, and it's where heaven meets earth. And I just can't wait to hear Joel to hear Joel speaking about this.
It's going to be dynamite, isn't it?
And on that session, and on the Monday night session, like this is about the. I'm not sure. Have we actually talked about these details? The Monday night Command Vagani. Do you know what a Command Vagani is, Gav?
No, but it's like, isn't it just a major party in night? Just worship and teaching.
Yeah, that's right. It's a Welsh tradition of a whole village coming together at the chapel, at the local chapel.
What did you call it?
A Command Vagani, like Oof. A big. I think you'd translate that sing meeting, or singing meeting, and it's a Commandva. Maybe there's an element of summons about it. So basically, during the day, pastors, ministry leads, Pete doesn't like that term, ministry leads, does he?
Yeah, no.
Pastors, church leaders, ministry leaders, that's the conference in the day. If you lead the church in any capacity, whether that is kids work or whether that is on the pastoral team or as an elder or as a deacon, you're welcome in the day. And your ticket buys a ticket for every member of your church to the evening celebration, where we will gather and sing in a large crowd and sing praise to Jesus Christ and hear the second main session of the conference. And as I'm saying that now, you're looking at me like, that's a big ask. That's a bit. Are we going to fit everybody in?
That's an interesting concept.
But I like the thought of the challenge. No, I think one of the things that I think
it's more the merrier, isn't it, on the Monday night?
And I think it has to be more the merrier, doesn't it? Because that's the thing that we've lost. That's one of the things that we've missed the most over the last couple of years, to be able to stand in a crowd and sing praise to Jesus. And so that's what we want to do on a Monday night.
And it's so true that the sessions have been designed, the round tables have been designed not just to serve pastors who are teaching, who may be leading in a particular direction or function for their church, but it's broader, isn't it? It's the kids ministry, it's the youth, it's administration, operations, the church office is going to be there.
Yeah.
There's so many questions that churches are asking behind the scenes.
Yes.
That we want to equip and support them to do.
Yes.
Just the whole thing about transgender with teens, that is going to be an ongoing discussion.
That's
that
another
needs
session,
input.
isn't it?
It's so important.
Man, it's a good conference, this, isn't it? We basically put the conference that we want to go to together, and we've asked people that we want to hear from, and they're coming. And I can't confirm who's doing that session yet, because I'm still waiting on just they're keen.
The final
I think
details.
It's the final details, and it would be wrong and rude for me to say who it is, but I want to be at that session. One issue that we've had to deal with, both conceptually and in reality with individuals over the last couple of years, has been, how do we lead families through the issues surrounding transgenderism and teenage years? And we want to do this biblically and sympathetically and courageously. And it's the sort of thing that I feel as a pastor really ill-equipped to deal with. And I'm really glad to be able to have this person come and help us think that through. And because this is one of those issues that it's not going away, and we have to be brave and with conviction say this is what the scripture says, but we need to do that with such a deep heart of compassion and tenderness to those for whom this issue is a real live issue.
Yeah, so true. So a couple of practical things then. So the website's up and running, rebuildthechurch.org. christchurch.co.uk.
Yes.
You can book on there. The cost at the minute is £75 a person. It's the early bird. That's going to run up until the 30th of April. So the cost does increase then to £90. So worth booking in early. We haven't even told them the date yet.
No.
20th of June to the 21st of June.
I'm glad you did that bit.
And we've organised with a couple of local hotels some cheaper rates. There's one particularly on the doorstep of Christchurch car park at £40 a night. So there's room here at a good price to be able to travel from distance. So not just guys that are in Wales, but guys right across the country. This is a good conference to go to. Not because we're running it, but because it's an opportunity to stop and to enjoy grace, to be equipped, and I'm looking forward to the roundtables, the seminars, the coffee, the cake, the lunches, the hangout time.
Yeah, Gav, there's one thing that I think
there's some life there, isn't there?
There's one thing that we haven't touched on in this conversation, and that's the breadth of contributors as a reflection of the breadth of the audience that we want to see there. I think one thing that is absolute, I'm so grateful to the pandemic grateful to God that he did through the pandemic, is smash that sort of partisanism that's in me, that just, that sense of, we know the way, we know how to do this. We're building this and you should all follow us, and we're on this team, and we gather around this flag, and we say it's the gospel, but actually, we're gathering around, the way we're doing it. And what I really have learned to appreciate is this, the narrow road is a lot broader than we think. And there are Christians that I see a lot of things differently to, but I can learn an awful lot from. And that's reflected to a degree in the speakers, and it's certainly been reflected in those who are showing an interest in coming along. And I'm very much looking forward to sitting with people who are different to me and learning from them and eating with them and breaking bread with them and just going, we are in this together for the sake of Jesus Christ and his kingdom. And we need one another. So I'm really hoping that we see the churches that are very different to one another in Newport and then wider afield as well.
Excellent. I totally agree. And let's finish the podcast here. A big thank you to Union, who have sponsored the event. Superb. Their generosity and kindness in providing funds to make it, subsidised for people. They're doing such a good work. And for those who've not heard of Union, Lou, come on, give me 30 seconds on what these guys do. Well, I used to know the
answer to this, but Union used to be a Bible college in Bridgend where I studied a long time ago, and now it's just so much more than that. It's like a centre for theological research. It's a publishing house. It's a mission centre. They train and equip church planters and support church planters. They got these learning hubs all over the world. I mean, what the vision?
The mentoring, the coaching. There's so much input is now into people, individuals. It's
staggering. I love looking at this and going, like, the Lord has gifted individuals differently to me to do the things that I could only dream of doing. And so, the books that they've published in the last couple of years have been wonderful. I mean, so a big shout out to Joel. So thanks for the money, Joel. We're grateful. But also thank you to Union for everything that they do. And they're going to be sharing a little bit about their vision and their heart for supporting ministry over the coming years at the conference, and they'll be there representing, so come and say hi.
Yeah, absolutely right. And 10 of those have kindly come and offered to be on board and to cover the bookshop and to bring new resources and good resources to
people have been really generous, haven't they?
Yeah, it's been wonderful to see. It's not behind the scenes, like people connecting together, movements and connecting. So now it's over to you listeners to come along, sign up and book in and come and join us and bring something, bring yourself and bring all that you are. And I'm looking forward to seeing what God's going to do through this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's rebuilding his church.
Yes.
For his glory.
Well done, Gav. Thanks, bud.
Good to be here.
That was fun, wasn't it?